is love. All you need is love. Love is all you need.
Hello there, I'm Lloyd Evans and you're watching the John Cedars channel from The Bunker, and we need to talk about the 2019 Love Never Fails convention of Jehovah's Witnesses. It is in fact now convention season. This is the time of year when Jehovah's Witnesses all over the world receive their 3-day convention. Especially in recent years, Watchtower has used these 3-day events as opportunities to, you could say, bombard Jehovah's Witnesses with what I consider to be quite manipulative video content. And one of the things I try to do on this channel is offer rebuttals to, among other things, the video content that gets put out by Watchtower, with the aim of, you could say, coercing Jehovah's Witnesses. To do this with the conventions is tricky because witnesses typically only see the videos when they go to the conventions. So I'm reliant on people inside Watchtower or people who know people inside Watchtower leaking the convention material early. This has happened every year for the past few years, and it's happened again this year. So thanks to someone on Reddit who goes by the name We Must Have the Faith, thank you very much, we now have all of the videos for the 2019 Love Never Fails convention of Jehovah's Witnesses, and I have decided to put together my 10 worst videos from the 3 days of videos that witnesses are being subjected to. So without further ado, let's roll the first clip.
So, you ready for the ministry?
Well, yeah, but I'm a little bit nervous.
I get a little bit nervous too, but if it helps, I'll do the first door. Let's start off with this one then. Because in there it tells us something about God. It says, when under trial, he controls the world.
I don't really know, to be honest.
Not distract. He gives the answer according to the Bible in 1 John 5.
What are you doing here?
We're just asking our neighbours a question.
No. You people and your questions. No one cares.
We didn't mean to disturb
But you did. You did disturb me. So get off my property before I call the police. Those witnesses.
Wow, Dad, he was really angry.
He was, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Well, I always try to remember that for years I used to react exactly the same way.
Really?
Yeah. As you know, I learnt the truth in my 20s.
Yeah.
Growing up in a violent family, it also made me violent.
I'm not interested. Go away and don't come back.
Wow, so what changed then?
Well, you see, one of my good friends died, and that very same weekend, the witnesses came round. Now, normally I'd yell at them, but this time I listened. And that's the beauty of the truth. Anyone can change. And that is one reason why we continue preaching. So shall we continue doing this, door?
Yeah.
Good.
So I feel there's so much to unpack in this particular video segment that we've just seen. First of all, it kind of raises questions about how appropriate it is to be taking kids round people's homes unannounced, trying to persuade total strangers to embrace your religious beliefs. Religion is clearly something that is quite divisive, something that people hold very personally. And there are going to be times when there are very, very adverse reactions to a Jehovah's Witness being on someone's doorstep or on someone's property. Is it right to be subjecting children to that sort of experience? And why are children in that situation anyway, where they are instructing adults on what their religious views should be in the first place? So there's all of those issues I feel are very vividly brought to life in this video. But what I find most interesting about this video is that Watchtower is more or less admitting that the optimum time to call on someone or to try to recruit someone into the movement is when they've gone through a tragedy. Because after they've called on this guy and they've had this, you could say, alarming experience for the child to behold, the father says, oh, well, I was like that once. I was very violent because, of course, if you're not a Jehovah's Witness, you're going to be prone to violence. You're going to be a monster, basically, unless you can get yourself into the truth and then put on the new personality. All non-Jehovah's Witnesses are fair game in that respect. They're going to be unpleasant people. But what saved this guy from being this monster was his friend dying. And then all of a sudden, the same weekend, the witnesses call at his door. And because he's emotionally vulnerable, because his friend has died, his guard slips and he's open to being recruited into a cult. And if you're watching this and you've never been a Jehovah's Witness, it could be that you've been following my channel for a while at this point, and you're thinking, yeah, but how could anyone fall for this sort of material? I mean, it's so overtly manipulative. The theology so clearly doesn't make sense. It's a mess of falsehoods and bad arguments. How can anyone fall for this? Well, there's your answer. People fall for it because they are pounced on when they are emotionally vulnerable. And this works time and time again. And in this video, Watchtower is celebrating the fact that they can capitalize on tragedy.
Okay. Oh. Bye, kids.
Bye, Dad.
Love you.
Dad? Dad,
Oh, hello, son.
are we still doing service tonight?
Oh, I'm just too tired today, Teddy.
Oh,
I just don't have it in me. We'll do it another day, okay?
yeah. Okay then. But Dad, I thought we weren't going on the ministry.
Well, I prayed for a little extra boost, Teddy.
If you're too tired.
I am tired, but you know what? I'm not too tired. Let's go.
Hey, Teddy.
I'll see you, Brother Edwards. Hi.
Wow.
Answers many other questions that you might have about the future. So what I'd like to do is give you an invite to our meeting.
Thanks, Dad. I really had a lot of fun tonight.
That's great, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
Please turn with me to 1 John 5:3. Here it says, "For this is what the love of God means, that we observe his commandments, and yet his commandments are not burdensome."
So yes, apparently there's never any excuse for not taking your child preaching, trying to recruit total strangers into your religion when you've got home from work and you're absolutely shattered. No, Watchtower's needs come first, thank you. You may have spent the day working relentlessly, going up and down flights of stairs to the point where you're absolutely exhausted. But if you've arranged ministry with your child, gear up, get your tie on, and be ready to do some more work for Watchtower. I was quite triggered by this video. I guess this would have been me if I'd stayed in the religion, being back on that hamster wheel of not just working to provide for myself, but also working for Watchtower. When I was a witness, particularly in the final years, I basically always had a tie on, because I either needed a tie for my office job, or I needed a tie for the ministry, or I needed a tie for the meeting. I basically always wore a tie, which is why I basically don't wear them now. And if I'd raised a child, that would have been me as well. You know, dragging my child out at all hours, trying to convince people to join my religion. Never an excuse for just having a rest, just catching my breath, and kicking back and enjoying life. No, everything has to be about serving Watchtower.
Hey, you ready to go?
Yeah, but where's your car? Are you serious? Your car's busted again. You need a new car, man. Can your parents drive us, or?
Well, they want to study right now. We can walk, they'll meet us there. The bakery's just down the street. We'll pick something up for the Rodenkos.
All right.
Hey, you want some coffee?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Thanks.
Hey, can I have 2 coffees and a box of targets? Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Your coffees will be ready in a minute.
I'm just waiting on our drinks. Hey, what are you so into?
Bro, they just released the entire season 2. Let's binge watch this weekend.
Yeah, I don't watch that show anymore. It started getting weird. All the heroes live together in that house and date each other.
Right, but it's about the action scenes. It's not like it shows them having sex.
Order's up. Your coffees are ready.
I'll get it. Here you go.
Thanks, man. Hey, Jake. About the show, here's a scripture that helped me out. Romans 12, verse 2.
Right. That one says, stop being molded by the system of things. But you know I wouldn't do those things.
Yeah, but it also says, be transformed by making your mind over. I honestly felt that that show was making my mind over in the wrong direction.
Okay, but you'd still do what's right.
Sure. But let's say, for example, you're interested in someone. Let's say Vicky.
Maybe.
Well, imagine the two of you start dating. You'd find good ways to get to know each other and see each other in different situations. But if your mind isn't fully made over to Jehovah's way, how far might you go?
Okay. I see your point, but I'm still not convinced it'd trip me up.
Yeah, but it's worth thinking about.
Yes, welcome to the weird and wonderful world of Jehovah's Witnesses, where apparently it's normal when you go to Starbucks with your friend and your friend mentions a TV show that features sex. Apparently it's normal to whip out your smartphone and show him Romans 12 verse 2 and basically guilt trip him into not watching the show just because you don't want to watch the show. This is just a whole new level of judgmentalism for me. I mean, it's one thing, look, people can decide if they want to not to watch a certain show for any number of reasons. But what I find weird and creepy is then insisting that others make the same decision for the same reasons. You could argue that the guy who was interested in, quote, binge watching the show was putting a little bit of pressure on his friend to watch it with him. But realistically, when the friend says, no, I don't watch that anymore, he could just say, no, I'm not really into that show anymore. It doesn't really interest me. You can't force someone to watch a show that they're not interested in. That should really be the end of the conversation. But because we're in the kind of weird, twisted world of Watchtower, where everything carries this huge baggage of, oh, well, we don't want to disappoint Jehovah, we don't want to upset him, we don't want to be worthy of annihilation when Armageddon comes, it's a matter of life and death. So, of course, you would get your phone out and show your friend the scriptural reasons why it's wrong to watch a show where consenting adults have sex.
I'm building my future with him every step that I take.
So, you gonna talk to any crew day people?
I don't think so.
Look, I know you got a part-time job lined up and you're gonna pioneer.
Yeah, so
the video production people are here. I'm sure they have part-time.
yeah, I still don't know.
Look, Dennis, you're good at it. Besides, they do corporate videos. Nothing bad. Come on, just talk to them.
All right, I'll check it out.
I hear you. Eventually you want to work part-time to pursue other passions.
Oh, well, I'd like to start part-time.
It's doable. But after you're established, after a few years of hard work and dedication, you'll be able to pick your own jobs, and you'll even get to set your own schedule.
Yeah, that makes sense. Hey, thanks so much for your time.
1 second, before you leave, just so you know, here's what you can make in your first year. My advice, try not to get too caught up in the sacrifice. Think about the payback.
Thanks.
Money. No. Wealth. Proverbs 23, 4 and 5. Do not wear yourself out to gain wealth. Stop and show understanding. When you cast your eyes on it, it is not there. For it will surely sprout wings like an eagle and fly off into the sky.
Hey, you ready to go?
Yeah, ready.
So, you talk to anybody?
Yeah,
Learn anything good?
I did.
Well, tell me.
So hopefully you can see that these videos in this selection are getting increasingly manipulative And just as a side comment, while I was watching, because I had to trawl through all 3 days of videos to bring you this selection, and gosh, it was so mind-numbing. I think one of the biggest problems I had watching this material was how overly simplistic everything was. It was like watching children's television. That's the kind of intellectual standard. And it's painful. Well, it's painful to watch children's television for a long time when you're an adult, and that's what it was like watching these videos. But throughout the tedium, you are jolted by, oh, this video's trying to manipulate me. And so the boredom gives way to anger. And this was one of those times where I was angry, not so much at the attempts to manipulate me personally, but the effect this will have on young people in the audience. Watchtower's problem is not necessarily with young people being wealthy, because if young witnesses are wealthy, they have more money that they can donate to Watchtower. Watchtower is anxious to make sure that people are serving them and are devoting as much time as possible to them. So you could have, as a young Jehovah's Witness, a very well-paying part-time job, so long as it's only part-time. Because Watchtower wants you spending the rest of your time putting in, well, as a regular pioneer, putting in 70 hours per month, freely offering your services to them to recruit other people into the movement. And that's aside from all of the time it takes you to attend meetings and assemblies and conventions in this case. What Watchtower wants is your time and your devotion and your loyalty. And well-paying jobs are going to get in the way of that. So they are putting their interests ahead of the interests of young people and frankly demonizing a career, demonizing someone doing a job that they love and that pays well. That is Watchtower's worst nightmare, because if a young person is doing something that they enjoy and that is rewarding them, it's going to distract them from serving the organization. This is purely about Watchtower putting its own interests ahead of the interests of young people.
What do you expect? He spent all of his time with my father.
He must be punished.
Hold your tongue if you want to keep it. You may be a priest of Baal, but do not forget who's king here.
I most certainly will not.
Good. Now go. And take that with you.
No. It will remain here for you to reflect upon, my lord the king.
So we've just been watching part of the drama. It's a two-part drama about King Josiah. And this scene is in part one, and we've just witnessed the assassination of Josiah's father, King Ammon or Amon, depending on your preference in pronunciation. Josiah's father's just been killed in a rather brutal way. With knives. Pointy knives have been used to kill someone. We hear the blood-curdling scream of Josiah's father dying. And I was watching this thinking, kids are being forced to watch this. My daughter is 5 years old now. She just turned 5. Would I feel comfortable with my daughter watching this? Absolutely not. I don't care that you don't see blood. I don't care that you don't see the knife actually go into King Ammon. What bothers me is that this is clearly a death. This is clearly someone being attacked with knives. And this is absolutely not, in my opinion, age appropriate for children. But this is the problem that you have with this video propaganda, is that it's compulsory viewing for everyone in attendance. You don't get to opt out of this. When you go to any of the conventions of Jehovah's Witnesses, including this one, the Love Never Fails convention, you're expected to sit through all of it with your children. And so if you're a Jehovah's Witness watching this with kids, you need to think about how comfortable you are with your child witnessing this sort of scene. Now, don't get me wrong, I am not a prude. I am all for realism. When you're dealing with a historical narrative or a narrative in a book like the Bible, let's have realism. Let's have it depicted as it describes it. But just because it's in the Bible doesn't mean it's appropriate for a child. The content of the storyline in this sort of feature has to be dictated by who's in the audience. And Watchtower's writing department has written this script with no regard, because they're not parents, quite frankly, with no regard for the fact that there are children sat in the audience. And this is why they've got in trouble in countries like Sweden, where quite rightly the authorities have said, now hang on a minute, adults can watch what they want, including adults attending a religious event, but when it comes to their children, we have a say in what material you are basically inflicting on young minds. And you need to apply for a license for that. And so Watchtower's got in trouble in Scandinavian countries for failing to follow the rule of law in that regard. And I can see them running into exactly the same problem here. They've clearly not learnt their lesson. Again, all that matters to them is manipulating their audience. They don't care about the fact that there are children in the audience, because again, the people writing this aren't parents and just aren't bothered really about how traumatized children will be from what they're showing. And it just enrages me as a parent that children, you could say millions of children potentially, will be forced to sit through this.
I saw you looking at Dennis.
Please, you and Jake were inseparable.
He's cute and doing pretty good spiritually.
Pretty good or really good?
Let's just say good. Besides, it's not like we're dating. It's just observing.
That's good to hear, girls. You're both still young.
But you can't help notice.
The spirituality or the looks? Hey, Mom. What was the first thing that you noticed about Dad?
Oh,
well?
Oh, I wasn't the first one she noticed.
Oh, you have to tell us.
Okay. His name was Tony. And it was definitely looks first.
But then her parents said, you need to look deeper.
Yeah. They definitely gave me a lot to think about. The verse at Proverbs 31 and 30 had a big impact on me. It says, charm may be false and beauty may be fleeting, but the woman who fears Jehovah will be praised. When I thought about that verse, I realized it applied to me, but it also applied to Tony. Neither of us was looking for the person who fears Jehovah. I tried to think, what my life would be like married to somebody who didn't put spiritual things first. And I really didn't like what I saw. So I decided that it was best to end things with Tony. And I started pioneering. And a year later at Pioneer School, I noticed someone else.
You were hard to miss too.
Thanks. Still, it took time.
It did. It really took until we could see ourselves putting Jehovah first, but together.
This is a choice that could either bring laughter or sorrow. And the feelings that start in a youthful heart, they could be gone tomorrow.
So we're really ramping up the manipulation at this point, and because there's no sacred ground, there's no area in someone's life that Watchtower doesn't feel it has a say in. We're now delving into people's relationships, we're delving into people's feelings about the opposite sex, and we're telling young people that one of the main considerations for finding a partner is whether that person is a devout Jehovah's Witness or not. That's what this boils down to. And you can see why that would be in Watchtower's interests, for both parties in a couple to be absolutely fixated with serving them, because then there's more chance that any progeny, that any children resulting from that relationship will themselves be indoctrinated. If one of the parents isn't really taking it seriously, then there's more chance of the children not taking it seriously either. This is, again, purely about Watchtower's interests. And in order to drive home their message, they have created this manufactured narrative of saying, well, if you're not pursuing spiritual things, if you don't have your spiritual career up and running, chances are you're a moron. Chances are you're an asshole. Chances are you're the sort of person who fouls people at football. More anti-football stuff. Don't get me started on that. But chances are you're just a nasty person if you're not putting spiritual things first. No allowance for the fact that, on the one hand, it's quite conceivable that someone could be putting spiritual things first, could be, let's say, an elder and be an asshole. And on the other hand, someone who has no interest in being an elder and no interest in being a ministerial servant could be a really nice, genuine person. Watchtower has to create this black and white narrative of you're only a good person if you're serving us, and wouldn't you know it, those who serve us and those who devote their lives to serving us and can only think about helping our organization in some way, they're the ones you need to pick for your relationship.
Jiho, hey. We're leaving for the meeting soon. Come on, let's get ready. We've got 10 minutes.
I don't want to go.
I'm sorry. What was that?
I don't want to go.
What does Jehovah want you to do?
I don't know. Does he want it to be so boring?
Maybe you should pay attention more, and it won't be so boring. Okay? Let's go. Jiho. You're in my house, so you do what we all do, right? Tonight, we're going to the meeting. Now come on. Jiho, hey, we're leaving for the meeting soon. We've got 10 minutes. Come on, let's get ready.
I don't want to go.
Jiho, did you say that you don't want to go? Can you tell me why?
It's boring.
Ah, well, it is a lot of sitting. you didn't always feel this way, did you?
No.
So, what changed? Do your friends think it's boring?
What friends?
Oh, I see. Jiho, I want to hear more about this tonight when we get home. Let's ask Jehovah for help, and then let's get ready.
Apologies if I've just triggered hundreds of you who've been through that exact experience with their parents growing up as Jehovah's Witnesses. Gosh, where to begin? Well, first of all, let's be absolutely clear that the first part, where the father is being, you could say, quite aggressive in ordering Jeho to go to the meeting, that's clearly the wrong way, as far as the speaker's concerned, to go about coercing your children to go to the meeting. The correct way, it seems, is the second way. And quite frankly, I think I prefer the first, because the first is at least honest. The first is realistic. The first is how it really goes down. In the second sequence, you have Jeho's father turning on the smiles and pursuing an appalling line of reasoning. Oh, well, why don't you want to come to the meeting? Because it's boring. Oh, well, it is a lot of sitting. As far as Jeho's father is concerned, and indeed the people who wrote this, there's no justifiable reason why the meetings would be boring. So it has to be the length of the meeting that's boring, rather than the content itself, rather than the fact that the instruction that witnesses are receiving is itself, firstly, overly simplistic, so that the audience is being spoken to as though they're children, and secondly, nonsensical and manipulative. No, it can't be that. It has to be just purely the length of the meeting. And then, of course, Jeho's father says, do your friends think it's boring? And Jeho says, what friends? So, oh, well, that's another reason why you must think it's boring, because you just don't have any friends. So we can work on you having friends. We can work on you meeting more people who are in this religion and therefore likely to put peer pressure on you to pursue this religion, because it's inconceivable that the meeting itself is actually boring, or it's inconceivable that there's anything about this meeting that wouldn't engage a young mind or that someone wouldn't find interesting. The meeting has to be interesting because it's the truth, because this is Jehovah's organization, and you're only ever going to feel encouraged and upbuilt by attending a Kingdom Hall meeting. So no excuses. Get in the car. You're coming. Again, there's the manipulation, but also it's disturbing because in a way this is more or less how it goes down. And lots of people watching this, both in this video and of course when it's shown at the convention, will relate very much to Jeho's situation.
Grace said no one could know he'd pass so suddenly, and not to beat myself up about it, but I knew I would lament that decision for a long time. I never again wanted to miss an opportunity to show love.
Brother Capra, do you have a second?
Hey, Kevin, how's it going? I realized that learning to show love more fully then would help prepare us for what lay ahead. This was one of Carl's favorites, right? Eventually, showing love would call for even greater sacrifices.
Where are they? Where are they?
I'm so glad that I never gave up in learning to show love, and that Jehovah never gave up on me.
Boy, that escalated quickly. I mean, that really got out of hand fast.
Yes, it did get out of hand fast. 1 minute you have an elder who is feeling bad about his friend Carl, who died suddenly, and he had an opportunity to visit Carl in hospital at his bedside, but he allowed himself to be distracted by something else and missed the opportunity, and his friend died without him visiting him. And so he resolves that he's going to try extra hard to be there for people. And then it immediately switches to the Great Tribulation and the police busting down the door. I find it fascinating that he's there with his laptop, frantically trying to delete information, and I think putting a map in the shredder, because at some point in the future, of course, the authorities are going to be fixated with everything to do with Jehovah's Witnesses. They're going to want to know who all the Jehovah's Witnesses are so that they can round them up in a field, of course. And there's even the picture of the Situation Room, which I think actually gets shown at this convention. I could be wrong. It's all a blur, really, watching all those videos yesterday. But there's the famous picture where the world's leaders are surveilling JW Broadcasting and Sam Hurd and people going out preaching, because this is the number one threat to the world is Jehovah's Witnesses. Don't get me started on how self-indulgent, really, this whole interpretation of prophecy is. But it obviously it serves a purpose, because it feeds in directly to the persecution complex, which I've obviously had a lot to talk about on this channel. The way to really get witnesses riled up and really get them enthusiastic about their belief system is to make them feel as though the world is out to get them. And of course, we're God's one true organization, because look at what's happening in Russia. Look at how we're being persecuted. Jesus said, if they persecuted me, they will persecute you also. So isn't it amazing that we're experiencing persecution? And wouldn't you know, in the future, it's going to get far worse, because armed police are going to bust through our doors and demand information on members of our congregation, because this is prophesied to happen in the Great Tribulation. But another interesting feature of this particular video is what happens next, because we move forward from the Great Tribulation to the paradise.
Now, when I see Carl, I have centuries of happy memories. Centuries of showing him and all of my brothers and sisters loyal love.
So, of course, this is what it's all about for millions of Jehovah's Witnesses, this idyllic utopia of the paradise where they get to spend centuries worshipping Jehovah alongside their fellow witnesses in a world that's only filled with Jehovah's Witnesses, where it's the official state religion, and they get to show love in this fantasy world that has been landscaped over unbelievable carnage. Because to get to this position, to get to this situation, what's the current population of the planet? 7.5 billion men, women and children and babies. They've all had to be slaughtered to make way for this loving arrangement where everybody is a Jehovah's Witness and everybody gets to show love to each other. love that at the moment manifests itself in shunning. Shunning is apparently a loving way to deal with those who stop believing that this is a good thing, to deal with people who just cannot bring themselves to believe the farcical set of beliefs that witnesses are required to believe and can only be brought to believe through emotionally manipulative propaganda such as this. The title of this convention is laughable, frankly. That when you really understand what goes on in this religion, when you really understand just how conditional love is among Jehovah's Witnesses, literally all you need to do for the love among Jehovah's Witnesses to evaporate is stop going to meetings. You stop going to meetings and you stop preaching, and notice how quickly this love evaporates, because you're bad association. You're no longer putting the truth first. You're no longer suitable material for dating, as we saw in a previous video. That's the paper-thin love that's on offer at these conventions. And what witnesses can look forward to is a time in the future when they get to celebrate this love over the corpses of billions that are buried a few feet beneath.
Just prior to my baptism, unfortunately, I became critically ill. I was eventually told I had 2 hours to live. The doctors insisted that I have a blood transfusion, and I took my stand. There was no question that I was willing to die for Jehovah. But the question to me was I willing to live for him? And I became all the more determined to use my life to serve Jehovah. So obviously I lived. It motivated me to really be focused on the ministry. I began regular pioneering when I was 17.
So hopefully it isn't hard to see why this has made it into my worst 2 videos of the convention. This is actually quite a rare event in Jehovah's Witness video material for them to be openly discussing the need for witnesses to die rather than accept a blood transfusion, or the compulsion that witnesses are under to do that. The only other time that I can think of in the JW broadcasting era, going back to 2014, when Watchtower really started investing in making videos, the only other time I can think of where the blood issue is kind of dealt with kind of head on in a very kind of clear, unambiguous way is in the Sergey videos from the 2016 Remain Loyal to Jehovah convention, the worst convention ever, as I dubbed it. And that's where Sergey makes it clear to the doctors that he refuses a blood transfusion, and the implication is that he then dies. It's not kind of clearly said that he dies, but that's what we're led to believe. And that's the only other time that I can think of where Watchtower celebrates this teaching of, if your life is in the balance and the doctors say you need a blood transfusion, it's better for you to die. Sally here says, I was willing to die for Jehovah. And this is the stand that witnesses are expected to take, all because of a woefully ignorant interpretation of a dietary restriction in the Bible. What's interesting is that this apparently happens before Sally is baptized, and she says in the same story that she began regular pioneering at the age of 17. Now, you can't regular pioneer unless you're baptized, so this means that this happened when she was still a minor. She was still a teenager when she nearly died. We don't know the circumstances. She doesn't explain how it was that she survived turning down a blood transfusion. Clearly that happens. I've interviewed someone on this channel who was in the exact same situation and later came to deeply regret the fact that he almost martyred himself. And it was only through the ingenuity of the doctors that he made it. Doctors who, by the way, have been through higher education and college. And just to highlight how crazy and reckless the blood prohibition is, I want to show you a video segment from this same convention where they're talking about how vaping, how using e-cigarettes defiles the body.
I was in a new school and I wasn't expecting to be pressured to smoke electronic cigarettes or vape. It was really intimidating. I was afraid if I didn't do it, I'd get beat up. But I love Jehovah and his standards, so I knew I needed to take a firm stand. I quickly found out that just saying no wasn't gonna be enough. My stand for Jehovah had to be serious and specific. I needed to rely on him and pray, so I did. But I also realized I needed to do research. I found some Bible principles that really helped me, like not defiling the flesh. So when the pressure to vape came up again, I prayed to Jehovah to give me the right words. He made me calm, and I told them, because of what I've read in the Bible, I choose not to vape. I'm not gonna do it. Don't ask me again.
Here we have a video telling witnesses, no, you really shouldn't be vaping because it defiles the body, and you wouldn't want to defile the body that God has given you. And in the same convention, they're showing a lady who, as a teenager, was willing to not just defile her body, but actually die. This, for me, just shows how evil and twisted this organization is. On the one hand, they threaten people with disfellowshipping for smoking on the grounds that it's unhealthy, while at the same time expecting people to martyr themselves over the blood teaching. This is an organization that doesn't just demand that people give all of their time in service, doesn't just demand a say in the most intimate areas of people's lives, including who they date. It also demands that when push comes to shove, you should be willing to give your life and die for this organization.
If your brother, or your son, or your daughter, or your cherished wife, or closest companion should try to entice you in secrecy, saying, "Let us go and serve other gods," you must not give in to him or listen to him, nor should you show pity or feel compassion or protect him. Instead, you should kill him without fail.
With Jehovah's help, we will rid the entire land of high places. Every vestige of false worship, and of everyone who promotes it. Once we cleanse the land of Judah, we'll head north again, to the cities of Samaria.
So when I was preparing this video, I left the Josiah drama to the very last. I wanted to watch both parts back to back, and I watched those two parts after I'd seen all of the other smaller videos. So I already had like my top 10, and I went into the Josiah drama thinking, well, this is going to be pretty much what you would expect, just as we saw in the Jonah drama. We're just going to see lots of fake beards and bad acting, and there's not going to be really that much shocking material in here. Oh, was I in for a surprise. And I'm going to deal with the Josiah drama in more detail in a later video. In fact, look out for 4 videos on this convention. I intend to do a video for the Friday, a video for the Saturday, and a video for the Sunday, this being a 3-day convention, and a separate video just dealing with the Josiah drama. What really disturbs me about the Josiah drama is the hidden messages. The Josiah drama represents Watchtower indulging in its ultimate fantasy of having control in a very real sense in the here and now, the same kind of control a country would have. This Josiah drama is the governing body living out its fantasy of a caliphate, in which they get to be the state religion. They get to hunt down and kill apostates, as we've just heard Josiah advising people to do. And the obvious interpretation for those in the audience is, well, we may not be able to kill apostates, but we can certainly shun them. So if this is how, in an ideal world, apostates should be dealt with, if it were possible to live by the law of Jehovah on a state level, we would be killing apostates. We can't do that because it's currently against the law and we have to obey Caesar's laws. But what we can do is shun them and treat them like scum and treat them as though they don't exist, because they are the Baal worshippers. And the Baal worshippers, as you can expect, are the ones in this Josiah drama who are depicted as evil and scheming and backstabbing and manipulative and coercive, whereas Josiah is the hero who rids the land of them. Those witnesses that it doesn't radicalize, I hope, will start to think things through watching this, because I like to think that if I were a witness watching this, I'd be thinking, oh, things are really getting messed up at this point. I'm now watching the governing body's ultimate fantasy of, again, this caliphate where they get to hunt down those who disagree with them, where they are the official state religion. It's their theocracy. They get to dictate who people worship, how they worship, what they believe, what they don't believe, and all power comes from them. That's what we're watching in the Josiah drama. And I do think if there were a part of the convention that I think you most need to look out for in terms of how manipulative it is and how dangerous it is in, again, stereotyping anyone who disagrees with Watchtower, it would be the Josiah drama that you need to look out for. It's and just to put things in context, aside from the Josiah drama, I think that this is actually a fairly mild convention compared to previous years. We haven't really had that much attacking of gay people as we've had in previous years. We haven't really had, apart from the kind of nuanced suggestion here, we haven't had overt calls, at least in the videos. I haven't seen the talks. We haven't had overt calls in the dramatizations to shun people as we had in the 2016 convention. But there is nevertheless some disturbing coercion and manipulation in this year's convention that you would be well advised to keep your eye out for, especially when it comes to young people and whether you feel comfortable. You need to think about whether you feel comfortable with your children seeing material such as this. But those are my thoughts on my 10 worst videos from the 2019 Love Never Fails. What loving material we've just been viewing. And again, look out for more videos, 4 more videos, in fact, on this convention over the course of the next few months. I will try and get the videos uploaded at least while the convention season is in progress. But I hope you have enjoyed this video. Please don't forget to subscribe to the John Cedars channel for more such videos. And as always, thank you for watching.